Hi there, and welcome to our video about your semiotic analysis. In this video, we're going to be talking about structuring and planning your essay. So keep in mind that academic writing is all about being persuasive. So think about how your writing can show your main answer to the question rather than simply describing the ad. So keep thinking about how your argument will determine your structure. So go back to your thesis statement and consider how your essay structure can follow that thesis statement to clearly develop your answer to the question. When you're planning your structure, create an outline first of all. Identify your argument and your main ideas. And think about the order. Once you've thought about your ideas, consider how can you make the structure convincing. Have you missed anything? For instance, have you focused on one theory rather than the others? And if so, do you need to make it a bit more balanced by focusing on more of the theories? Is the structure logical? Is that structure, for instance, developing from one idea to the next? And does it flow? Have you explained the connection between the ideas? Think about creating an essay plan. Now, for an essay of 1,250 words, it's useful to think about each paragraph as containing 100 to 200 words. Using that, you can then think about having an introduction, that's between 100 to 200 words, and then roughly anywhere between 5 to 8 paragraphs. And that could be based on how many different ideas do you want to develop, and a conclusion of the same size. So think about how many points or how many ideas do you have? And if you want to group multiple ideas together, you could have sections, for instance, that have one section about a particular theory and a few paragraphs for that, and then another section about another particular theory, if you think that that's relevant. Then think about what your supporting evidence is for each point. That will help you to plan your structure so that when it comes to writing, it makes it easier. You can just focus on one paragraph or one section or one idea at a time. So let's take a sample. In this sample, the student is first of all introducing the interaction between the semiotic elements, myths and ideologies and discourses of the ad. So in that introduction, they're presenting part of their answer to the question, just like in the thesis statement discussion that we had in the previous video. Then what they start off with is a description of the ad, a denotative reading, and then a connotative reading. Then they move on to the linguistic message. And then they get into the more complex ideas. So subject positions, hailing, the intended identity, and the ideologies that the ad includes. So this structure follows a bit of a simple to complex structure. It goes through the simpler ideas or the more literal ideas first of all, and then to the more abstract ideas. So you might think about whether a structure like that suits your main answer to the question. Another example that we see introduces the ad again, so just like in the previous one. And then it starts off by talking about Barth's theories and how they apply to the ad. So they do a denotative, connotative in reading of the ad, and they talk about the linguistic message and the myth. So that's what I would call starting off with a bit of a mixture, a bit of the simpler ideas along with the complex idea about myth. So they start off by establishing what the ad's myth involves. And then they go through the semiotic elements and they analyze each of those elements that you see on the screen. So they go through the more concrete or the more literal analysis of the ad. And then they move on to hailing, so Althus's idea. So taking it back to the complex ideas. And then they add an extra idea. Now keep in mind that for this essay, you don't need to include any extra sources. You just need to talk about what you've been covering in the course so far. So extra ideas won't necessarily get you any extra points. You really need to do a very good job of analyzing the ad's meaning based on the signs and semiotic elements within the ad, as thinking about the Althusser, Barth and Williamson's terms. Then this particular essay ends with a conclusion about the ad's ideology. So it goes from setting up the complex idea, then the simpler ideas, going through how they show the meaning, and winds up with the complex ideas again. So you might think about whether a structure like that works for you. So think about how the different theories connect, because your structure can be a range of different things. You can combine ideas in different ways. So you could combine similar ideas and consider overall, do you want to move from the simpler ideas to the complex, or from a complex idea to a simpler idea to a complex idea again? Or do you want to combine them throughout? It's up to you. You can choose whichever structure you think best. So think about what is most logical for your argument. Now, when writing, it's really, really useful to give yourself plenty of time. So to avoid perfectionism and writing paralysis, do think about writing in multiple stages. So the first draft and the second draft, they can be rough, just for your eyes only. Concentrate on getting those main ideas down and thinking about how the structure might work. And don't worry if there's repetition at that stage. Instead, think about getting the ideas down and think about how they combine and so on later on. So in the third draft, fourth draft, and so on, do that editing. Go back to what's your argument, what's your structure, and then focus on the polishing it up. So it helps to have a bit of a plan. So you might think, okay, if the essay is due on the 11th of September, in the week beforehand, I want to make sure that I've got enough of a draft ready to polish. So that means that actually you get started on actually writing the draft 2 weeks before. So get started thinking about the essay 3 weeks before. That will give you plenty of time to write it up. In the following videos, we're going to be talking about writing up your introductions and paragraphs and conclusions.